The late afternoon sun cast a fading amber glow through the grimy windows of the candlemaker's workshop, where Etienne Moreau sat hunched over a cluttered table. His fingers, smeared with wax and soot, moved with careful precision as he molded a fresh lantern, his mind racing with possibilities. Around him, the scent of melting beeswax mingled with the faint, musky temps of old wood and oil lamps. Outside, the distant murmur of the restless city seeped in, the growing unrest of Paris a persistent whisper beneath the tranquil enclosure of his trade. Etienne's eyes, dark and sharp, reflected the flickering flame dancing atop a small test lantern. It was not just any flame, it was a beacon, a language born of fire and shadow. The coded messages hidden within the wax lanterns had been the spark that thrust him into the heart of the revolution, but now he sought to elevate this secret art to new heights. The old methods, while effective, were limited. The enemy's spies lurked everywhere, and the risk of interception grew with every message delivered. He adjusted the wick, then dipped a fine brush into colored wax red blue, green each shade chosen deliberately for its meaning. By varying the intensity and rhythm of the flame's flicker, he could create a complex language invisible to the untrained eye. His heart thudded with cautious excitement. This was more than craftsmanship. It was strategy, rebellion woven into the very light that could pierce the darkness. The workshop door creaked open, and Claire Dubois stepped inside, her auburn hair catching the last rays of daylight, her sharp eyes alight with curiosity and unspoken urgency. "Etienne," she whispered, closing the door softly behind her, "the city waits on every word we send. Your invention could change everything." Etienne looked up, a faint smile breaking his usually serious demeanor. "I hope so, Claire. If the flames can speak, then maybe we can outwit the shadows that hunt us." She stepped closer, the warmth of her presence a stark contrast to the chill that often gripped the streets outside. "Tell me how it works." With a steady hand, Etienne demonstrated the new lantern, the flame flickering in a deliberate cadence. Different colors, different flickers, a code within the light itself. No longer just messages sealed in wax, but signals that can travel unseen, unbroken. Claire's eyes gleamed with determination. If we can send warnings, rally allies, and coordinate attacks without the enemy's knowledge, the revolution's chances grow stronger. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Jacques Lambert, Etienne's mentor and master candlemaker. The older man's worn hands bore the marks of decades spent shaping wax, and his kindly face softened as he regarded the younger's innovation. "You've come far, Etienne," he said, his voice gravelly but warm. This could light a new path for us all." Etienne felt a swell of pride but tempered it with humility. "It is not just my work," he replied. "It is ours crafted from the courage of those who dare to hope." As dusk deepened, the trio worked late into the night, perfecting the lanterns that would soon carry the hopes and plans of a city on the brink. Outside, the sounds of distant protests and the occasional crackle of flames reminded them of the stakes at hand. When the first coded message was dispatched, Etienne stood beneath the shadowed eaves of a narrow street, lantern in hand. The colored flame flickered, pulsed, and danced an eloquent whisper in the dark. Unseen by all but those who knew its language, somewhere a comrade watched and understood. Somewhere hope was rekindled. The flame's light was fragile, yet fierce a symbol of justice and defiance. In that moment, Etienne felt the weight of his journey from apprentice to revolutionary bearer of light. The revolution was far from one, but with every lantern's glow, the darkness receded just a little more. And as the night deepened, the city held its breath, waiting for the flames to speak once more. The night had settled over Paris like a heavy shroud, the narrow streets whispering secrets carried on the chill wind. Inside the cramped candle shop, Etienne Moreau's heart pounded louder than the distant clamour of unrest outside. The lanterns he had so carefully crafted flickered softly, their warm glow casting dancing shadows on the worn wooden walls. Tonight, the fragile sanctuary of wax and flame would be shattered by a truth he had long feared. For weeks, rumours had circulated a leak within their ranks, whispered warnings of movements anticipated before they occurred. Etienne's discovery of coded messages hidden within the wax lanterns had brought him deeper into the fold of revolutionaries. But it had also exposed him to the danger lurking within their trusted circle. Philippe Rousseau, a man who had walked alongside them in the dim alleys and whispered plans beneath the veil of darkness, was no comrade. Etienne had pieced together the subtle inconsistencies, the furtive glances, the hurried whispers that fell silent when he approached. Now, clutching a folded piece of parchment concealed within a lantern's hollow base, Etienne waited. The air was thick with anticipation, the scent of melting wax mingling with the faint aroma of damp stone. Philippe entered, his footsteps cautious yet betraying none of the storm about to break. His sharp eyes flickered, catching the lantern light as if sensing the trap. Philippe, Etienne's voice broke the silence, steady but burdened with accusation. "We need to speak." The words hung between them like a gauntlet thrown. Philippe's face tightened, a flicker of unease crossing the sharp planes of his features. "What is this about?" he asked, voice smooth but guarded. Etienne stepped closer, revealing the parchment. "This message was meant for Count Henry's men, the very plans we shared. You betrayed us." The room seemed to constrict, the candle flames quivering as though shying from the revelation. Philippe's gaze hardened, a cold smile curling at the edge of his lips. "You're clever, boy, but not clever enough." Before Etienne could react, the door creaked open and Claire Dubois slipped inside, her auburn hair catching the lantern light like embers in the dark. Her eyes, fierce yet shadowed by hurt, met Etienne's. "We must act quickly," she urged, voice low but urgent. "Our trust has been shattered, but the revolution cannot falter now." The weight of betrayal pressed down, suffocating in its intensity. Claire's confession of her own fears and the sacrifices she had made echoed in Etienne's mind, intertwining their resolve. The fragile web of alliances trembled, yet within the fracture lay a spark and ember of renewed determination. Jacques Lambert emerged from the shadows, his weathered hands cradling a broken lantern. The fragile glass lay shattered at his feet, a stark symbol of their fractured trust. "We must mend what is broken," he intoned softly, with vigilance and with heart. Gathered in the secret cellar beneath the city, the revolutionaries huddled close, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of lanterns. Etienne's voice rose above the murmurs, steady and resolute. "We have been betrayed," he acknowledged, "but this will not be our undoing. We must be sharper, more united. The light we carry is more than wax and wicked, is hope, justice, and the courage to face the darkness." The murmurs grew into nods of agreement, the flame of rebellion rekindling despite the shadows cast by treachery. The night outside may have been fraught with peril, but within those walls, a new chapter was beginning, one forged in fire, tempered by betrayal, and fueled by an unyielding spirit. As the lanterns flickered and the city held its breath, Etienne realized that the path ahead would be darker yet brighter for the trials to come. The revolution was no longer just a dream. It was a crucible shaping the souls of those brave enough to hold the light. But the question remained, who could they truly trust in the gathering storm? And with that lingering doubt, the chapter closed, the lanterns casting long shadows that whispered of battles yet to come. The night had settled deep over Paris, the sky a heavy blanket of ink pierced only by the occasional flicker of a distant lantern. Inside a small, hidden room above a nondescript tavern, the air was thick with the mingled scents of damp stone and burning candles. Etienne Moreau sat across from Claire Dubois, their faces half lit by the wavering glow of a single candle set upon a rough wooden table. The shadows danced over their features, lending a restless energy to the moment. Claire's auburn hair caught the light, flames reflected in her sharp eyes, but there was a shadow behind them, a weight she had carried alone for too long. Etienne noticed the slight tremor in her fingers as she unfolded a folded piece of parchment, revealing the seal of a noble house, a mark that stood in stark contrast to the plain clothing she wore to blend, unnoticed among the revolutionaries. "Etienne," she began, her voice low but unwavering, "there is something you must know about me, about who I truly am." He leaned forward, the smudge of wax on his cheek catching the candlelight, his curiosity piqued but tempered with caution. "You can trust me, Claire." She took a steadying breath. "I am the daughter of the Marquis Dubois. My family is divided, some loyal to the crown, others sympathetic to the cause we fight for. I left everything behind to stand with those who seek justice." Etienne's heart pounded with a conflicted rhythm. The revelation was both a shock and a beacon. Here was a woman who risked not only her life, but the fragile bonds of her birthright for the revolution. Yet, with such a lineage, came danger, enemies within and without, suspicion from comrades, and the ever-present threat of betrayal. "Why tell me now?" Etienne asked, searching her eyes for any hint of hesitation. "Because you need to know who you fight beside," Claire replied. "Because our enemies will use every weapon they have, even my bloodline, to undermine us. And because I trust you, Etienne, you have been my confidant and my strength. Together, we must prepare for what is to come." Outside, a distant cry echoed the city, restless, alive with the murmurs of rebellion. Etienne felt the weight of her words settle upon him, mingling with the scent of melting wax that forever marked his days and nights. This was no longer a simple fight. It was a battle woven with the threads of loyalty, sacrifice, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. Days passed in a blur of whispered meetings and hurried preparations. Claire's resolve only deepened as she took to rallying their allies, her voice ringing with passionate conviction amidst the cramped quarters of their secret gatherings. Her noble background, once a secret to most, became a double-edged sword, inspiring some, sowing doubt in others. Yet her unwavering dedication broke through skepticism like a beacon through fog. At one such meeting, the small room buzzed with tension and hope. Revolutionaries from various quarters leaned in as Claire spoke, her words slicing through the uncertainty. "We stand on the edge of a new dawn," she declared. "Our fight is not only against tyranny, but against the fear that would keep us silent. I have walked both worlds, the gilded halls of nobility and the shadowed streets of Paris. I know the cost of silence, and I choose to speak, to act, to fight." A murmur of agreement rippled through the gathered crowd, the fire within them stoked anew. Etienne watched, pride and admiration swelling alongside a fierce protectiveness. Here was a woman who bore the scars of divided loyalty, yet her spirit burned brighter than any flame he had seen. Later, in the quiet solitude of the candle shop, Etienne found himself alone with the familiar scent of wax and wicks. The flickering lanterns cast moving patterns on the walls, shadows that seemed to echo the turmoil within his heart. Claire's revelation had unsettled him, yet it had also galvanized his purpose. He traced the rim of a lantern with steady fingers, feeling the weight of the messages it might carry, the silent words that could alter the fate of a city. "You carry more than wax and flame." Jacques Lambert's voice came softly from the doorway, the older man's presence a balm to Etienne's restless thoughts. "You carry hope, Etienne, and with hope comes great burden." Etienne looked up, meeting Jacques' kindly gaze. "Her secret, it complicates everything. How can we trust when the enemy lurks so close?" Jacques smiled faintly, the lines of age deepening with the wisdom of years. "Trust is a fragile lantern in a storm, but it is also the light that guides us through the darkest nights. Remember that even fire, with its power to destroy, can also kindle warmth and courage." The candlelight flickered between them, a silent testament to the fragile but unyielding flame of their cause. Etienne nodded, the resolve hardening within him like the wax he molded daily. The road ahead was fraught with peril, and the shadows of betrayal loomed large. But Claire's courage and the bonds they forged would be their lantern in the darkness. As the night deepened, Etienne could hear the distant murmurs of the city, the restless heartbeat of a revolution gathering strength. With Claire by his side and Jacques' wisdom to steady him, he stepped forward into the uncertain dawn, ready to face whatever trials awaited. The light of the revolution, fragile yet fierce, would not be extinguished. The night had settled over Paris like a heavy velvet shroud, its darkness punctuated only by the soft, flickering glow of lanterns held aloft by shadowy figures moving through narrow alleys and twisting streets. Etienne Moreau's heart pounded beneath the coarse fabric of his worn shirt as he gripped the handle of his lantern, its pale light casting long, trembling shadows on the damp cobblestones. Around him, the city's restless breath was audible in the distant clamor of footsteps, murmured commands, and the rhythmic beating of drums that echoed off stone walls like the pulse of a living beast. Claire Dubois walked beside him, her auburn hair catching the lantern's glow, her sharp features set in resolute determination. She whispered instructions in a low voice, careful to keep her words from carrying too far. "Once we reach the square, the signals start. Each flame a message, hope, warning, rally. We must be precise." Etienne nodded, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. These lanterns, once mere vessels of wax and light, had become the lifeblood of the revolution. Through their coded flickers, plans were whispered across the city, secrets passed beneath the noses of the aristocracy and their spies. Tonight, those signals would ignite the first flames of open rebellion. They slipped through the labyrinthine streets, the air thick with the scent of smoke and damp stone. The distant cries of sentries and the occasional crackle of gunfire underscored the tension, each sound sharpening Etienne's senses. His mind raced, recalling Jacques Lambert's steady hands and quiet warnings from earlier that evening. In the cramped workshop, Jacques had meticulously checked each lantern, ensuring every wax seal and coded pattern was flawless. "Remember, Etienne," the older man had said softly, "this is more than light. It's a beacon for those who dare to dream of justice." As they neared the central square, the city's heartbeat quickened. Lanterns appeared in windows, on balconies, and in the hands of gathered revolutionaries, their flames flickering like a constellation of defiance against the oppressive darkness. Etienne's breath caught as he caught sight of Count Henry de Villiers, standing atop a balcony of his grand estate, his tall figure silhouetted against the opulent glow of candlelight. The Count's eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the streets below, wary of the rising tide that threatened to sweep away his world. The first signal fled a sudden, deliberate wave of light from Etienne's lantern. It passed through the ranks like wildfire, each flame responding in kind, weaving a luminous tapestry that pulsed with urgency and hope. The revolutionaries surged forward, their footsteps pounding pavement, voices rising in a chorus of rebellion. Etienne felt the heat of the moment burn through him, a fierce resolve replacing the lingering fear. Amid the chaos, the lanterns became more than instruments. They were symbols of the city's soul, tiny fires of resistance against centuries of tyranny. Etienne's eyes burned with tears and soot as he moved with the crowd, every flicker of flame a promise that justice might yet prevail. But the night was far from over. The battle for Paris had begun, and with it, the fragile hope for a new dawn. Etienne knew that every step forward would be paid for in sacrifice and blood. Yet the lantern's light endured, a guiding flame in the encroaching darkness. As the first volleys echoed and the streets ignited with the clash of ideals and steel, Etienne's thoughts returned to Jacques' words. Hold fast to the light, the mentor had urged. Even when all seems lost, the light endures. And so it did, flickering bravely against the night, the siege of Paris unfolding beneath its unwavering glow. The air was thick with smoke, acrid and choking. As the fires of rebellion consumed the once quiet streets of Paris, Etienne Moreau moved swiftly, his breath ragged beneath the soot-streaked face that bore both grime and determination. Around him, the city writhed in turmoil. Flames licked the timbers of houses, their orange tongues clawing at the night sky, while the sharp crack of musket fire echoed through the labyrinthine alleys. The scent of burning wood mixed with the temps of sweat and fear that clung to every rebel and royalist alike, clutching a fragile wax lantern close to his chest. Etienne's steady hands trembled, just slightly not from doubt, but from the weight of responsibility. Hidden inside the lantern was a coded message, vital to the revolution's next move. The wax that once served as his mundane craft now held secrets capable of altering the fate of Paris itself. His heart pounded in rhythm with the distant cries of battle, each beat a call to courage. Navigating through the maze of barricades and fallen debris, Etienne's sharp eyes scanned every shadow, every flicker of light that might betray an enemy's presence. The city he had known as a place of quiet routine was now a battleground where every step could mean life or death. Yet his resolve burned brighter than the fires consuming the neighborhood. Ahead, the faint murmur of voices drew him toward a narrow alley where Claire Dubois stood rallying a group of ragged revolutionaries. Her auburn hair caught the firelight, her sharp features set with fierce determination. She raised her voice above the din, weaving words of hope and defiance that cut through the despair like a blade. Etienne's presence steadied her symbol that the cause was alive and that their efforts were not in vain. "We hold the flame," Claire declared, "and as long as it burns, so does the promise of justice." The men and women around her echoed the cry, fists raised and voices rising in unison. Etienne felt a swell of pride and purpose. This was no longer a mere struggle for survival. It was a battle for the soul of a city, and each lantern he delivered was a beacon in the dark. Yet danger lurked at every corner. Count Henry de Villiers, the towering figure of the old regime, stood atop a hastily constructed barricade not far away. His aristocratic coat, embroidered and immaculate despite the chaos, caught the firelight as he surveyed the burning streets with cold eyes. Rage and a growing dread warred within him. The flames that threatened his power also illuminated the inevitable fall of a world he had long controlled. Beside him, Philippe Rousseau, ever the shadowy operative, whispered urgent reports of rebel movements and betrayals detected. Their plans were fragile, balanced on a knife's edge. Every act of rebellion was met with ruthless countermeasures, and trust was a scarce commodity. Inside the candle shop, Jacques Lambert stood at the doorway, watching the inferno unfold. His hands, once steady in shaping wax, clenched tightly as he observed the city's destruction. Age and weariness were etched into his face, but beneath lay an unwavering spirit. He worried not just for the revolution, but for Etienne, his apprentice, transformed from a boy into a man forged by fire and strife. As Etienne approached Claire, a sudden volley of gunfire erupted nearby. Instinctively, he dropped to the cobblestones, the lantern clasped protectively in his hands. Around him, cries of pain and defiance mingled with the crackling blaze. A young fighter beside him fell, clutching a bleeding arm, eyes wide with shock. Etienne's breath caught, but he forced himself to rise, pressing onward. "We need to move," Claire urged, grabbing his arm. "The commander awaits the message." Together they dashed through narrow lanes, the glow of their lantern casting flickering shadows on the walls. Etienne's mind raced, every sense alert to the perils surrounding them. The coded message inside the lantern held instructions that could coordinate an attack to break the enemy's hold without it. The uprising might falter. Reaching a hidden courtyard, Etienne handed the lantern to a weary but resolute commander. As the man deciphered the code, a silent nod passed between them, a fragile hope ignited. The commander's orders sent waves through the rebel ranks, turning scattered resistance into coordinated defiance. But the price of courage was steep. As Etienne slipped away, a sharp cry pierced the night, a warning that their movements had been noticed. Gunfire erupted again, closer this time. Etienne sprinted, heart pounding, the city's inferno chasing his every step. Emerging into a wider street, he stumbled upon a group of royalist soldiers advancing. Without hesitation, Etienne darted into a side alley, the narrow space thick with smoke and heat. His lungs burned, but he forced himself forward, driven by the fire of conviction. Behind him, the city's flames roared, illuminating the faces of those who fought and those who fell. Etienne's courage, once tentative and cautious, now blazed with the same fierce intensity. In the heart of destruction, he found a light that no fire could quench, the unyielding spirit of resistance. As dawn threatened the horizon, the battle's roar softened to a grim silence. Paris lay scarred, its streets littered with the debris of conflict and sacrifice. Etienne paused, lantern in hand, to gaze upon the flickering flames that still burned. They were a testament to both the cost and promise of revolution. "This is only the beginning," Claire whispered beside him, her voice steady despite exhaustion. Etienne nodded, the weight of what was lost and what remained heavy on his soul. The flames of resistance had been stoked, but the path ahead was fraught with peril. Yet, within him burned a fire that would not be extinguished, a light to guide the city through its darkest hours. And so, beneath the smoke and embers, the fight for justice blazed on.